Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, Chuempala. Good evening, world. Welcome to TVBAKWETU. My name is Elias Munshya, and I'm coming to you live from Calgary, Alberta. From Calgary. It's cold, about -4 or -8 or somewhere there. And so it's extremely cold. I'm very glad that you could join me here today. Today, I want to begin a process of not really teaching about the law, right? Because the law is quite wide, and I don't want you to be receiving free lectures from me. And so I'm going to be teaching about the law. I'll be choosing topics, various topics, and then I'm going to spread it over time. So you won't know when I'm actually going to present a law lecture, but tonight it's one of those first lectures, and I have a very good PowerPoint presentation. Look at that. So I'm going to be going through this PowerPoint presentation. Get your notes ready. Now, this is not a classroom, so don't think like, no, this is a classroom or anything like that. This is a very hilarious way of looking at the law, because I want to help you out. I want to help you figure out what the law is, because indeed it touches everyone. And so this is for those of you who are, if you are a student, a law student, and you're looking for an extra resource. Now, this cannot be the main resource at all. So this is going to be like an extra resource. You want to get more ideas about what is law and stuff like that. This is it. This is your lecture. It can't replace your studies. It can't. But if you are a lay person and you just want to know a little bit about what the law is and blah, 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 you're welcome as well. And so it will be coming late, instead of you just spending time gossiping and listening to all sorts of things and watching various bad things. Bad things, instead of watching bad things, you'll be able to listen at least to this lecture. So we thank you for all those that support TVBAKWETU. If you're not yet a member of TVBAKWETU, please make sure that you subscribe, all right? You subscribe, you just hit the subscription button, and then you become a monthly supporter of TVBAKWETU. Very important. The other thing is, you can also send stars and various other things. On YouTube, there is also a way in which you can become a monthly member of TVBAKWETU. And the reason, the whole point with TVBAKWETU is not just deal with politics like we do. We want to be bringing cultural, educational, and so sorts of programming targeted at our people. So today, I'm going to give you this lecture on the law. Now, of course, I have given you the disclaimer. This is not legal advice. If you need a lawyer, go and consult a lawyer in your jurisdiction. I'm aware that we on TVBAKWETU are multi-jurisdictional. We have members in Europe. We have members here in Canada. We have members in America. We have members in Zambia, in the Philippines, and several other countries. So if you need specific legal advice, please go and seek it from lawyers in your jurisdiction. Okay? Not from me, because these are general lectures that I'm giving. And then I have a license to practice here in Canada. And you know, our law licenses are not as portable as they should. Anyway, so I would advise you to do that. You cannot take what I say here as replacement for legal advice. Never do that. All right? So what is law? You know, there are all these questions that are asked about what the law is. And I just want you to begin thinking closely about this. Now, in order for you to understand what law is, you perhaps need to create a distinction between civil law and common law. Now, these two terms, civil law and common law, you're going to be seeing them a lot in formal studying of the law, right? You're going to see them a lot. And depending on the context, they change their meaning, right? And so, we're going to look at this. So when you are looking at the type of a jurisdiction, right? By jurisdiction, what this simply means is the country. So let's just say the country, or the country's legal tradition, right? So when we say country's legal tradition, civil law, when we say civil law, what we are meaning are countries in the world that use a system of law that is mostly derived from the Romans. All right, that's what I'm saying there. Civil law that are primarily derived from the Romans. And the civil law jurisdiction, or the civil law system, depends on some sort of a civil code. So which countries use the civil law system? Most European countries, they do use a civil law system. France, Belgium, Italy, all these countries in Africa, Congo, partly South Africa, and several other countries. So those countries that were colonized by the French mostly, they use the civil law system. So that is what it means. We have a system, primarily two systems of law: the civil law system and the common law system. So the civil law system derives itself from the Romans, and it has several countries that recognize that system. The common law system, on the other hand, is also another system of law. It is found mainly from the English, okay? From the English. Now, I shouldn't say Britain. The reason why I shouldn't say Britain is because Britain comprises several countries. Some of these countries use the common law system. One country, Scotland, uses the civil law system or a combination of both. But it's important for you to know that when we say the common law, we are referring to the English legal tradition, England and Wales. That is the primary father, so to speak, or mother of the common law system. All right. So that is the civil law system and the common law system. The civil law system derives mostly from a civil code. Its history is very closely related to the Roman system during the Roman times. The common law system, on the other hand, is primarily derived from the English common law, from the English legal tradition and legal system. Okay. So how would I know if a particular country practices the English common law system? First of all, if it's England, yes, right? The other thing is, if it was colonized by the British, by the English, most likely they use the English common law system. So I can predict quite effectively that Zambia uses the common law system. Malawi uses the common law system. Very easy, because I can relate it because of its colonial tradition. But it's not all colonies that use primarily the common law system. Zimbabwe uses a combination of both the common law system and the civil law system, which is derived from the Dutch Netherlands. South Africa also is a combination of both the common law system and the system of law they've derived from the Dutch. And so countries like Lesotho, even if it was colonized by the English, it's also got some civil law systems in its place. Okay. The common law system, the basic idea of the common law system is that it is a body of laws that follows primarily the English common law system. And the word common law is very, very much related to the common law. It's related to how the law itself has developed. Common law. That's why the language itself says common, meaning it just came up. So it's not like somebody sits down and then creates this body of laws, as happens in the civil law system. No, right? Because in the civil law system, you create a civil code. And then it is that from the civil code, that's when now you apply the law to a nation. The common law system did not develop like that. It developed almost like in a very confused and haphazard manner, you know? Haphazard manner. It's like, that's what used to happen in the common law systems. And so those are the major differences. So in a civil code system, for example, if you have to deal with a matter, you just go to the civil code, you read what the civil code says, and then apply that civil code on a particular situation, right? Very easy. In a common law system, it is not as easy as that. In a common law system, you must first of all look at your situation and then go to how courts have looked at a particular situation. And then the law develops as a result of continuing decisions of courts and judges. And so civil court systems are not very much centered on what judges have said in the past. In the common law systems, the development of the law itself is very much dependent on what judges say. That's why in common law systems like Zambia, we watch what judges are saying. And the entire outlook of the law depends on what judges are saying. What are the reasons they are giving? What are the things that they are saying? Because whatever they say, it becomes part of the law. All right. So these are a little bit more detailed, and if you have to look at this, there are several resources that you can find, and the law as well. The other common law system is most jurisdictions in the United States. Most of them are common law systems, except for a few states, because remember, the United States of America is actually a series of countries, about 50 countries, which come together. And then they have their own system of law. And much of this system of law is actually the common law, except for Louisiana, which practices partly the civil court system, right? Canada as well. We have two legal traditions in Canada. Now, there are several, when you include the indigenous systems of law. Canada also uses primarily two systems, the English common law system and the civil court system in Quebec, one of the provinces in Quebec. So Quebec is a civil code jurisdiction, and much of the other Canada is the English common law tradition. Why is this important to know? It's important so that when you are reading the law or you are dealing with legal principles, you would know the difference. I know that the world has now become very international, just like everything else, right? And so because it has become extremely international, there is this idea that you could be reading something, from Quebec, and you think that it is binding on a common law country like Zambia. No, it's not. So that is what the law is. Now, after we deal with the systems of law, right? I told you that civil law and common law, these terms, they reappear in law a lot of times. And so civil law as a system is different from what I'm going to be discussing next. Okay? So remember, civil law and common law are two different systems. However, these two terms, they're reused elsewhere for different purposes. So it does not end at these are terms that are just used to describe the systems. No, these are terms also that are used within the common law system to describe something else. Okay, that's very important. Okay, so let's go to types of law. The basic degree that most of the people must have in order to practice law is actually known as a Bachelor of Laws. Bachelor of Laws. So there isn't one single law within the common law system, right? There isn't one single law because every category of law has its own rules that are different from the other. That's why I think you must be very smart to do law. Extremely smart. So every law is different. So it's not like you just do one law and then you know everything. It does not work like that. Because even the principles that are used in one type of law could be extremely different from another type of law. Okay, so I'm going to give you a list of some laws, right? And then I'll just explain a little bit about that. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of laws, but we don't have that chance to. So I'm just going to go through a list of those. So there is criminal law, right? So criminal law is a law that deals with offenses, with what society, with what a country has decided to regard as a crime. All right, as a wrong that a person does, not just against the neighbor, but against the state. So that particular law that deals with telling us what a crime is, telling us how a person becomes guilty, telling us about what those things are forbidden by the state, and all that is known as criminal law. All right, so criminal law. For example, if a person assaults another person, the type of law that is likely to deal with assault is criminal. So criminal law is also known as penal law. By penal law, it means punishment. All right? What is the law that governs how people are punished in a society if they do something that is wrong against the state? All right? So criminal law, a crime is something, it's a wrong that you do against the state, basically. It's because it's the state that comes to arrest you, and it's the state that takes you before a judge so that a judge can decide whether you are guilty or not. That's what criminal law is. It has its own principles. For example, under criminal law, a person is presumed innocent. Presumed innocent. Now, I've already told you that there are several categories of law and they are quite different, but sometimes they overlap, right? And I'll deal with some of the overlaps shortly. So under criminal law, a person is presumed innocent. So a presumption of innocence. A presumption means even if you catch someone actually doing something, like you catch a person stealing your TV, you've caught them, right? And they are thieves because they've stolen. But under criminal law, there is this presumption that says that even if you find a person stealing, they are presumed innocent. In other words, the law gives them something, assigns something, covers them with innocence, right? So it's like the law just saying, okay, we found a person naked, but but we are going to cover them with something. So it's a presumption. It's not based on reality, because reality could be that now, as far as the law is concerned, criminal law is concerned, they are innocent until wamutwala court ero number judge aya pingro kuba church no yumuntu ali criminal law. Okay. So there is another criminal. Also, so criminal law. What is criminal law? You study about corruption. You study about assault. You study about rape. You study about all these things that are crimes. In Zambia, the source of criminal law is known as the Penal Code. So the Penal Code mostly it's a piece of law that has been passed by Parliament, which explains what a crime is and how a person becomes guilty. All right? That's criminal law. Now, there is also another law that is known as civil law. Now, you remember I told you that civil law is also a system. Now, this civil law I'm talking about here, it's not a system. It's just a category of law under the common law. Criminal law, civil law. So civil law basically simply means private relations among people. That's what civil law is all about, okay? That's the general idea, civil law, right? Relationships among people, and within civil law are several other categories. Now, for the sake of our lecture today, I am just going to give you an idea that that's what it means for civil law, private relationships between people. So, if I enter a contract with a person, with another person, for example, there is a contract about something, that's a private matter. It's a civil matter, as we call it, civil matter between me and Gandwa, whom we have entered into a contract with. All right. So those are several laws: criminal law, civil law, and then there is property law. Now, property law can also be under civil, but you know you're going to learn all these distinctions later as you continue studying. Civil law, property law simply means law that has got to deal with property. You know, even to property, things. Now, property is not just tangible, right? Now we have gone into intangible property, intellectual property, and several other things. So that's another law that deals with property. How do you transfer property? How do you even claim that you own property? How do you even come to own property, right? Like right now, I have this kabat. You know, I use it for my things. So it's my property, but how did I become the owner of this property? You know, did I buy it? All right. Okay. So if I decide to throw it away in the bin and somebody else goes and picks it from the bin, are they going to become the new owner of the battery? That's property. And then there are things like cars, a vehicle. Who owns a vehicle? From cars, we come to land, right? Property, land. Who owns a house? How do we own a house? If you own a house and you want to divide it, how do you divide a house? If it's a contract to buy a house, how is it supposed to be? That's property law, okay? Rules in property law are different, perhaps from property to property and from property to property. Anyway, then there is family law. Family law is anything to do with families. You know, some things that we take for granted. What is a family? Who are the members of the family? What obligations do family members have with each other? How do people get married? If they get married, how are we going to treat their property? Again, some intersection, right, between law. If we are looking at property, we're looking at family. If a family owns property, how is the law going to treat that? There are several rules. So property, for example, it could just be property, and you can claim to be the owner of the property, or you can claim to be the owner of this pen, of this battery. But if you get married, family law comes in and says, okay, so will the spouse also become the owner of this battery? All right. Can your spouse also have the rights to dispose of this battery? So questions begin expanding. But anyway, that's family. So family has got to do with relations of people when they are getting married. What happens to their property? What happens to their children and everything else? Now, family talks about good things, good times when people are getting married. There is a lot of joy. People are happy. Insalamu bali pila na lobola bali pila fyonse nokunwa bantu abakolwa na wedding bakwata family ero batampa nokwata abana children ero ngafyapena the law comes in. How are you going to treat this family? Are they separated? If they separate, then who is going to live with the children and stuff like that, right? Those are all the different categories of law. Human rights law. This law has to do with human rights. Intellectual property law, constitutional political law. Constitutional law is the sexiest of all laws because we particularly we Zambians, we love it, don't we? We argue about it. So many people ask me to say, why do lawyers argue all the time? Well, there is really just one area of law where lawyers disagree a lot and lawyers argue a lot and people see a lot. It's constitutional law. Disputes about the state. Disputes about how you interpret a constitution. You don't see a lot of arguments in the other areas of law, but law is bigger than just the constitution. So you can't just judge lawyers on the basis of the fact that tawomfuana about what article dash of the constitution says, because there are several other areas of the law, a lot of areas of the law where there is some consensus. And the reason why constitutional and political law is so sexy, it's because it's politics. It involves governing, it involves elections, it involves the president, it involves the opposition. And so that is why we talk about it a lot, all right? Constitutional law. So even in Zambia, we do have constitutional law, and every jurisdiction, every country has its own constitutions, right? And so every system now, I go back to system. The civil law system has its own rules that govern a constitution. In the common law system as well, we have general rules that govern a constitution. How a constitution is supposed to be written, how it's supposed to be interpreted, and several other things. That's very important. So those are so on this first slide, civil law, Roman mostly. Common law system, the British, the English legal system, legal development. And then there are different types of law: criminal, civil, property, family, human rights, intellectual, constitutional, contract, torts, military law, a lot of different kinds of laws, right? Okay. Now, who are the players in the legal system? the players in the legal system. This is important to know so that you are not confused at all. In a country like Zambia or a country like Canada, there are several players. The first player is Parliament. So Parliament is the lawmaker. Parliament makes laws in all the common law systems and common law legal traditions. Parliament makes laws. Here in Alberta, the Alberta legislature makes laws. In Canada, the Canadian Parliament makes laws. In Zambia, the Zambian Parliament make laws. And so immediately you talk about Parliament, then you bring into the picture several other players, like the executive. The executive is the president and other executive officers in a government. So that's the executive. The judiciary means judges, basically, okay, courts of law. And so those are the three arms of government. Parliament makes laws. The executive implements the laws that Parliament passes. The judiciary's main function is to interpret the laws. When there is a dispute, it's the role of the judiciary. So those are the three arms of government in our English legal system, or the Zambian legal system, or the Canadian legal system, or as we call it, in the common law legal system. So Parliament makes laws, judges and the courts, or the judiciary. This is one of the most controversial thing, right? Because so the judiciary is a branch of government. Judiciary is a branch of government that is responsible for courts and for judges. It's a branch, it's government. And so in the legal system, it has a tradition. It has a role that it plays in helping people resolve their disputes. So in the legal system, you have Parliament, you have judges, you have courts, you have lawyers, and you have prosecutors. Now, when it comes to the court system itself, we usually just focus our attention on judges, but it's more than that. You have clerks, you have registry clerks, you have court clerks, you have custodians, drivers, recorders, marshals, researchers. It's a whole complicated system. And so when we are referring to the judiciary, it is true we are referring to the judges, but we are also referring to all the support workers that support the judiciary, that support the judges. Because without the support network, the support work, the judiciary cannot function. So in the concept of the separation of powers, you are not just looking at the fact that Parliament does this, the executive does this, or the judges interpret the law, but you're also looking at the infrastructure of the judiciary itself, right? Like in Zambia, we are right now concerned that the Constitutional Court does not deliver judgments on time. And you know who gets the blame for that? Judges. So we go to judges directly and say, these judges are not doing enough because they're not delivering their decisions on time. But we forget that for a judge to sit, first of all, they must have a place to sit, right? They must have a court. They must have a building, at least, right? But the Zambian Constitutional Court, to date, does not have a building of its own. So in order for it to sit, it must go and beg from the Supreme Court to say, to pereniko inchende. One. Two, they don't even have their own buildings to keep their own files. So then how much are they funded? Do they have the money? You know, if people file in the actual documents and the actual papers in the Constitutional Court, where does it go? Do they have registry clerks? Do they have clerks? Do they have scanners that can help them have access to the things that people are scanning, are bringing in court? So that is a wider debate. But our focus just goes to judges. Why do judges take so long? I'm a petitioner. These people are going to take 1 year or 2 years. It's true, in Asia. But at the same time, if we want the court systems to be effective and deliver their decisions on time, you better fund them. You better build buildings for them. and help buy them pens and support staff. Because no matter a judge, or no matter how good a judge is, if you do not have a supportive infrastructure behind those judges, there will be no justice. That is just what it is, right? They're not going to sit. So those are the courts. Okay. Now, what are the sources of law? Very important. What are the sources of law? And we are going to come back to some of these. What are the sources of law in Zambia? If Zambia is a nation of laws, the next question that we must deal with, where does the law come from? Who makes the law, right? So we've said Parliament does, but how does Parliament decide? Does Parliament just come up and say, these are going to be our laws? So what are the sources of law? There are various sources of law, but most importantly in our country, Zambia and Canada and several other countries, Parliament is the first source. Parliament passes the law. Then the next category of law are customs and traditions, intambi. And so intambi are part of the law. In other words, how things are done. That's it. So the law is broader than just what is written, right? There are so many unwritten rules that's around the law. One of the things when it comes to, in fact, constitutional law, much of constitutional law principles are actually unwritten. And this is the dialogue that we must have, particularly in Zambia. You see, much of the English legal tradition, the common law tradition, most of its constitutional law principles are not written in a document, right? Much of it is not written, particularly the issue of the separation of powers or the relationship of those branches. In England, for example, England does not have a written constitution, but more than that, even its senior officers like prime minister and all these other things, they operate by tradition. Canada, the same way. In Canada, we have a prime minister, but the office of prime minister is not written anywhere in the constitution, nowhere. And even how somebody becomes a prime minister, it is not written anywhere in the constitution. And how does it function? It functions by tradition or by what is known as conventions, meaning this is just the way it has always been. And that practice has now become part of the constitution. So when we are dealing with the constitution in Zambia, it's not just about what is written. This is very important. It is not just about what is written, but it is more than that. It is the constitutional principles, convention, leaning towards democratic tenets. That is what it means, right? And I'm afraid that if we left things to tradition in Zambia, there will be chaos, right? Because there is this tendency among our people, right? We want something written. Imagine we argue about something that is written. What would happen if we just left it all to tradition? It will be quite chaotic. So interpretation of the law, interpretation of the constitution, particularly political law, has a lot to do with tradition, right? So constitutional law truly is about what is written, but more than that, it is also about what is unwritten. So, for example, the recent decisions by the speaker to rule that those 9 MPs are out of order. So sometimes you may not actually have an actual page where you can get what that decision is. And in those times, we lean back to democracy, to democratic principles, democratic values. because democratic values are as much a part of our country's constitutional fabric as what is actually written. So if somebody interprets the constitution of our country or implements it in a way that is problematic and in a way that betrays democratic values, that becomes a huge, huge concern, right? Anyway, those are the sources of law. And then another source of law are judges' decisions. Right now, this is huge, and there are several other sources, and I'll leave it up to you to look at that. So, judges' decisions in our country are a source of law. It's known also as precedent, as a precedent. So in the legal system, in the common law legal system, which Zambia subscribes to, we have precedents, meaning when a higher court, and I'll be dealing with this in a later stage. It's known as the hierarchy of the court system, and I'll be dealing with that. In our legal system in Zambia, it's like a pyramid. So don't think that the pyramids are new. It's a pyramid system. It's a pyramid system in the sense that there is an apex court, apex meaning a court that is on top, and then courts that are lower, right? So what this means, it does not mean then that the higher court judges are much more important or much more educated or anything like that. No, all it means is that the higher court is higher in rank than the judges. So than the other judges. So the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. So the higher the court, the more they bind lower courts. It's known as precedent. So a decision of a higher court is binding on the lower courts. What that simply means is when a lower court is considering an issue that is similar to what has already been decided, the lower court is under obligation to follow what the higher court said. Right? That is one of the most important features of the English common law system. It's very different from the civil code, right? Because in the civil code, you have this civil code and then you apply it to a situation. In the common law system, when you are faced with a question, you look at what the law says, but you also look at what judges, your higher bosses, have said about this particular decision. So there is a hierarchy in the court system, like I have said. It's like a pyramid. The higher courts have this ability to bind the lower courts. Now, they are not just binding the lower courts, but they are binding everyone else in the country. Yeah, so that's what happens. So at the lower category in our country are known as local courts, right? Local courts. Those are the lowest ranked courts. Now, there are several other courts, maybe chief courts. I know there has been issues with the Barotse land thing, but Barotse land did have its own traditional courts and stuff like that. So those are local courts. And so local courts are what we call statutory courts. And by statutory courts, what we mean is that it is a particular law, a particular legislation that has given this court its jurisdiction. Local courts, right? That's why there is the Local Court Act, the Local Courts Act, which is a piece of legislation that gives jurisdiction to a local court. So a local court can't just assume jurisdiction. By jurisdiction, we're saying if your court yapelwe ensambu kupingula. So local court bali ipele ensambu iya kupingula kwefintu fimo fimbi teti pingule iyo like mwaikato omuntu bukabwalala owakwibira ekintu tetumutwale ku local court but local court tayakwataire jurisdiction eyakupingula ama criminal matters, right? So yaliikwatire ine ifwire yadealinga nafyo local court, right? Ila dealinga ko another area of law yobe that probate and succession, which simply means omuntu ngafwa, what happens? Bantu, we humans have this tendency to go to my bad manners, but as human beings, you know, ka bad manner kamo death to la fwa. Hello, we die at a very tawishibe wafwa. No plan wafwa. Taulefwaya wafwa. You know, when we now ni nendeke yapona wafwa. Now ni na motoka mbu wafwa. Walwala wafwa. Walala wafwa. So because of that, there is an area of law that deals with onombo muntu ngafwa, what will happen? Ichitumbi chabana. Okay? Ibana nabakasala kwa kushika. Elo ngasha tukwacha ikaya kui. You know? Elo kwa bana mawuza yako bati. We muntu chiri umutontolo and lawyers, believe me, have very bad manners tabale mbama wills anyway. It's very bad. So anabani for my lawyers to let them mawis. So will asala tinkapero ngapero. Nomba ngarakti alikwata ko abana ko umbina ko kwine. Wafia. So that is the area of law. So local court alikwata ko insambu to deal with some property division, but particularly in customary marriages. If you pofiachikaya. If you pofiachikaya. So local court. That's the lowest court. But if your high court yala ndokobati tayakwate jurisdiction over customary matters. High court yali kana. Even if bali kwata original jurisdiction to try everything, but high court bali ifumyako kobatawe if ni local court yakulasala. Okay? But on a legal matter, if you have to decide on a very critical legal matter, it can go up to the high court. But mostly that's the local court. And akale kwali abakote abaleba ma judges mu local court. Number fyali chinja. I think under Vena Chiruba, they tried to change that and bring in younger people mfumu in the local court. And then there is a magistrate courts. Number nama magistrate courts here yalikwata nayo ine it's a statutory court. By statutory court, what it means is you go to parliament. It's parliament who created that court. It's known as magistrate court. Magistrate are different classes. Kwalibama magistrates abafuire okuchita preside over emiranduish kulu ero kwalibama nabachita preside emiranduish non. There are several other classes, okay? Magistrates. So their jurisdiction is varied, and some of the jurisdiction is automa civil cases. If you have a contract, they deal with that. Automa torts tumo they deal with that. But automa torts if you have a muntu agubunka na motoka. Wacheneka. That is known as a tort. Okay? Contract here cover to muntu mwaingira na kwa contract ati you know, like na ilikuwa the contract na chingola TV kwaya. Right? So ine na ingira contract na chingola TV kwaya. Limo nokusaina limbita musaine te mwamfwana. So inga mwamfwana na chingola TV kwaya. Ni nshini contract. So ngafya pena, kwa kuri contract ringi kutumaya ko civil division of the magistrate court solve. And sometimes kulabati how much is involved? You think kuli involved in PA magistrate limited akwata jurisdiction, the jurisdiction ya kuli court kwa ikolideko. So those are the courts. And then there are courts to that inherent jurisdiction. Now, I am a court na milondorela, local court, na magistrate court, they are statutory courts, meaning kuliko a statute in parliament that is passed, okulondolola what these courts can do and what they cannot do, and stuff like that. the conduct. They can't go outside that. But a high court is known as a court with inherent jurisdiction. Inherent jurisdiction, ni court, mlandu wako bati ni court. That's it. Right? So umuntu ngabati ni high court judge. They have a lot of power, unless a few instances where ubuteko bwabapoka kofimo bwatwalira kuisa bwatwalira ko bambi ayi bwapera ko bambi. So number they're still the judges of with inherent jurisdiction number ubuteko bwaranda namwishura imwe tetumule ekitafyonse. So number twalafwa yakotuma specialized courts twakweba ati imo mwira pose nshita bantu fumota mwishive mama like tax. Tetu wafiati wamuku dealing anama taxes that because you are a high court judge. No, uteko bwali fwa yako a different tribunal, a tax court. Yako bati yafwa yako abaishwa aba specialized mufya ma taxes. Eba bakwana kalimo ma judges. So bali bapoka ba high court, even if they have inherent jurisdiction. Thimbi ni industrial relations court akale. In the new constitution, industrial relations court has become a subset of the high court. But akale mubena kaunda na bena chiruba. Industrial relations court yalisa bakona kalimoni separate division. Yalisa ibere in a court. So baba pokolola ba high court idia jurisdiction over industrial and labor matters. That walako a specialized court. Yakobat tema judges favor lay kala to decide those cases, but even other lay people. Our members, they were also part of that industrial relations court. Under the new constitution year 2016, number industrial relations court is part of the high court. Okay, so those are that's a court, that's inherent jurisdiction. Okay, inherent or original jurisdiction, meaning original kwalivembila ndusha kwa bati tetuwe ushambile mlogo court na magistrate court ofire wa shambila mu high court. Original means ukwakwambila, inherent means court yali kwa tensambu umulandu fe wako bati ni court. So nangu mwasa pasa legislation ya pasa magistrate court ya pasa na local court, high court yena would still remain a high court because of inherent jurisdiction. Number, that's what the high court is. Now, in addition to the high court, I'm appellate courts. Appellate courts. Appellate courts means appeal. So high court yet to decide on the basis of facts or the law. Because ama judges na babantu limokutiri nditabachitiri understand wino bafirufianya. So wakwata kwensa mbuku wakuchita appeal. Those are known as appellate courts. In Zambia, the appellate courts is a court of appeal. Elonomba pamulu wa court of appeal kwasawa Supreme Court. But in addition to that, Muzambia tuwalipanga another court yotuitati constitutional court. Again, ukufumia issues of the constitution from the high court abakwata inherent jurisdiction of nearly everything. Elonomba mwasa station mwasa apela konomba iimbi court mwapanga iyutuwati constitutional court. According to the Zambian constitution, Supreme Court and Constitutional Court, they rank equivalently. Whatever that meant. Lots of confusion, eh? Anyway, so Supreme Court na Constitutional Court chimochini. Except that Constitutional Court badi pela what it is supposed to deal with, and Supreme Court number is dealing with everything else. All right. So those are the courts. So number, when a matter is before a magistrate court, a magistrate is supposed to interpret the law via kufyo parliament yalanda, but if your Supreme Court, if your High Court, Supreme Court, a Constitutional Court valanda over an issue. So you see, this is what makes complicated, mama. And so if you are a player in this particular legal system, first of all, ufuna ukwishiwa efyo parliament yalanda ewatampa no amba okusambirira efyo ama-judges balanda na you know that ama-judges tabalanda efyo omukuumu so balalandalanda so balanda mu 1964 balanda mu 1977 balanda mu 1994 so nomba ofuire okulakita fall fyonse efyo balelanda stuff fine yeah and that's what lawyers are trained to do kuya mukukonka efyo ama-judges balelanda n'okuvipanga as part of the legal system. And this system works very well, except for one area, which is political law. And the reason is because you are so much interested in political law. Political law, no. In fact, if you law, extremely boring. Extremely boring. Like, if we move from political law to ayakuli law, for example, property law, extremely boring. Umuine wanganda ni nani? Extremely boring. Kutuwachinjesha na ownership. Kala kutila kuli farm. Umuine wa farm ni nani? Ashitisha umuntu ashitisha farm kuli uyu. So a lot of complications. But because political law, yeah, they were very interesting and to mulomo. It's like mulomo law. If there is any law in Zambia and world over, show mulomo, it's constitutional law, political law, politics, and that's why we relate to it, we debate it a lot, and to be honest, because it's an area of law that is mostly in public domain, everybody participates in. It's a very democratic law, you know. If you can't participate in them, like property law, why are you going to participate in it? Now, family law, could question about family law. You know, if you think we don't, that does not really concern us. We are not concerned about it. We don't want to know about it. We don't want anything about it. We forget about it. But bring in politics. Anyway, those are the hierarchies. So let me just review what we've been through today, and I hope that we are going to I'm going to give you more ideas as we go. Civil law, common law. Civil law is Roman system, mostly European law. Okay, mostly European. When we say Europe, that's what we mean. And then we learned also about types of law, different types. It's not one law at all. And every type of law has different rules that you need to know and study. There is criminal law, civil law, property law, family law, human rights law, intellectual property law, constitutional or political law. And then there is contract law, there is military law, maritime law, law of the sea, law of the air, law of the land, law of trees, law of Malasha, law of whatever. A lot of laws. In our country, there are several sources of law, and because Zambia is a Christian nation, I meet some people think that the Bible is a source of Zambian law. No, it's not. Okay, it's not. So the Bible is not a source of Zambian law. No matter how much we believe in the Word of God, it's not a source. So one of the sources, it's parliament, it's customs and tradition, it's judicial decisions, meaning precedent. And particularly, the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. Higher courts making a ruling and binding other courts and everyone else. And then we also looked at the several players in our courts. The idea that it's not just about judges, you know, it's also about several other players in our courts. And if we want speedy delivery of justice, we shouldn't just focus on judges. We need to focus on all the other players, like buildings, you know, like the Constitutional Court. Rent them a very nice building, please, or build them one. Not kulomba. Kwaliva ma judges ndisonte Constitutional Court balomba fye. Ukwakuikala tabakwata ama offices tabakwata. Number, what kind of system is that? Ero mrefu at deliver justice wangu. To make it worse, ama MPs abo 9 abo at they can't sit until Constitutional Court decides. When is this Constitutional Court will decide? In 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years, or in some cases 5 years. You see how confusing it is. All right, I'm going to end here, and I'll see you sometime when we deal with other topics in the law. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. If you want me to deal with a particular topic, just let me know, because it's complicated. That's why, if you are going to start with me on these areas, make sure that you stay on. Little knowledge is very dangerous. That's the problem. Some of you waberenga fyaka nono wako wamba nokutola kwati parefyo wishive iyo mneteka nya. That's why I want you to stay on and keep referring to these lectures. All right, because it's very important for us to stay together, and I hope I'll be making it simpler and more understandable. Again, when we professionals come on these things, it's not accurate or something like that. Some of the things may be different. What is most important is that we want this knowledge to be accessible to our people one way. Not if you move a fisa, if it is straightforward, So we want to make it accessible to our people, because it really matters, right? Correct knowledge and outlook of the law is very important. All right. One last point. The philosophy of the law. How? The philosophy. How? What makes law? How do we think about the law? Right? That's why, personally, if I had a way of dealing with who should become a lawyer, I think it's not enough for to just straight from high school, they go into law school and then they become lawyers. I wouldn't recommend that. I think let them study something else first, and then the law degree, let it become a second degree. Because you need a certain way, a certain outlook about life in order for you to find your reflection on the law much more beneficial. Because of Mafiko High School or into law school, sometimes the cover wider appreciation of the entire picture. Number lawyers are too narrow-minded, too narrow-minded, because if very, very narrow-minded. But what you need is a much more broader perspective, a philosophy of the law, an outlook of the law. What makes law, right? I think that should in fact be the first course in law. What makes law? How do you reflect on the law? If you were the lawmaker, how would you make it? Much of the English legal tradition, again, it just came almost by accident. Vale lunda. Kwali momo echowa nshopera tiwe iwama qualifications ya lawyer we yakulunda. Yes. So law is actually that way. It's patchwork, right? That's what it is. So under the English tradition, so ichindu chachitika bagambikapo lawyer magamba. Chachitika bagamba. So that's what the law is actually. Magamba gamba, bagambika gambika. Right? So you need a wider appreciation, an appreciation of history, an appreciation of philosophy, an appreciation of thinking and logic. Logic, an appreciation of common sense. Now, of course, but you see, law is common sense, quite all right. But some of it is artificial common sense. So common sense yakwalesa, lesa atpanga, atpera mano ayachfiarirwa. Very important. Aena ya mano yachfiarirwa eyakubomfya nomba to look at the artificial sense of the law. Right? Both. You can't appreciate the artificial sense of law. You can't. For example, wasanga umuntu amano yachifyarirwa yako wasanga kabwalala. That's an example. Umuntu wamusanga na sensenta TV pamutwe. TV yove, national yove podidi. So common sense tells you nikabwalala. All right? However, the law tells you nangwa musanga naiva ali innocent, which means when you say ali innocent, ali presumed innocent, it means number law yamupela innocence, yamukaika, yamupela that you are innocent. So you would take kusanga kabwalala pale watampa kwa kumuponona wamba kwa kuuma. Kawasanga kabwalala nasenda TV elo wambo kumuma. It's an offense. Mulando ni assault. If you feel kuchita kumwikata wa muchita restrain nombanga wa mupumako panono while you are restraining him pako tumuto wa kuli bakapokola, or you do what is known as a citizen's arrest. Yes, it's reasonable. Nombanga yakutira wa mulopwero kuipaya mulando. Nomuna how the law is working. Common sense. Artificial common sense. But you still need that common sense. So the concept here, artificial common sense, started with when the king, in 1500s, the king of England, as judges na parliament, can grow English traditional system, English common law system. Bali setting asana, setting a king na parliament, nama judges. Fiala is setting over a long period of time. So what the king used to say was, inena alikuwa common sense. So, kanshi, I am the chief judge because I'm a king. Elo, nakula pingule milandu using my common sense. Elo Judge Coke, one of the very important judges in the English traditional system, in the English traditional system, Judge Coke. Elo asaiva chief king. Even no, it is true. Ukweba tu walikuwa common sense. Nomba, common sense alone is not enough. And why isn't common sense enough? It's not enough in the sense that walikuwa common sense. Nomba, ufiruwa sambiti dako na mafunde artificial laws, artificial things that have been created in order to help us deal with the law. So common sense yeka, it's not enough. It's quite all right. It's important. It's the most important thing. As long as you use it for you to understand the other artificial rules that have been set up. Like you're in a presumption of innocence. Naimbi, Judge Coke yuine, Judge Coke. Ewa ishirera ndoko ati. Ima, tekusanga fyo omuntu, wasanga omuntu vyofini na tuika fridge, nangu na tuika stove, nangu na iva. Pari ya pene iwe, wa mukaka no kumukaka atikaidi na weva. No. Judge Coke alandiro kwebata awe. Kumwikata momutwala mu kifungo. Ero bakapokola batita investigate. Ero nomba bakapokola batwala kuma prosecutors. Ero nomba kulia kuma prosecutors bamuita kuli judge. Ero nomba iwe weo aibireko TV. Weo aibireko TV. Ero waya as a witness. Why na mumbokoshi. Walapa no kulapa. I'll say the truth, nothing but the truth. After walapa. Ero nomba whatever judge ine. I was at my house. Ero yuka walala aishire ingira. Aingire shane. Alito bechibi, alito ba iwindo nangu aingire gendoshi. And that it's the appear. atero charishani atero nomba ine nindala ero nasavuka nasanga omuntu mung'anda nasenda TV naloresha afuma avutuka na TV yandi ero namupepeka nayamwekata ayushua ewo waiketewo yati nifinisha afuere cha red necha black ero nali mumweni namenso yandi uyu wino oyu njajebero shuwa te nyuyu wine na owine omuntu oyo wine wikete naperwa ensambo nawo wakulondolola every church kokalandile in the 1500s evere apuna leso omwine ilio Adam na Eva ilio Adam na Eva valufyenye vavembuka lesa alisabeta ukweva Adam ulikwi Adam wevere kwena nindufyania. In other words, okupela omuntu the chance to be heard. Te kuchitafi conclude. File fya kuchita conclude vya kuchwempala. Mwamana amano ya kuchwempala. Very important. Nomba ngamwaingira mulo ni sharia mano mufirimu alunda pona yambi artificial knowledge. Otherwise, you're going to run into serious problems. So nomba olyawe no muntu kabwalala nawo apelwe ensambo ishakulondolola kuchilie kutasala ndati au mkwaya babalembe peshafye ilya TV nasendere yali TV yandi. Anyway, until Judge Nombacha decide to say okay, I decide on this case. That is what it means. Artificial rules, artificial intelligence. Those are some of the ways of how you look at the law, the philosophy of the law, the approach. How is this going to be? Over the 9 MPs, the same thing, okay? Over the grade 12, grade 12 thing, the Constitutional Court passed about the grade 12. It's the same thing. What are the artificial rules that you're going to use to apply that common sense for the benefit of our people? Anyway, God bless you. This has been a presentation of TVBAKWETU. Elias Munshya here. Good night, and we'll see you sometime.